Hello! So today we're going to be learning about frequency tables, and it's really something that you already know. It is something that you're just putting a few skills together. Last week will really help you on this assignment. So this is an example of our frequency table. All right, so let's pretend this is a wildlife reserve and they are helping these types of animals out. And so at this wildlife reserve, they have 4 cheetahs, 8 lions, 6 tigers, and 2 leopards. So the frequency of an object is how often it happens. So a frequency table is just giving you a normal amount of information that you're used to seeing on a table, okay? They're just adding that frequency in there. So frequency means how often, all right? So how often it is happening. So if I said the frequency of children I have in my home is 3, because I have 3 children. So there's a couple things they might ask you off of a frequency table. So they might ask you to write a fraction, okay? And remember, a fraction is a part over a whole. It's comparing a part to a whole, all right? So if I wanted to write a fraction of cheetahs, okay, the part that I'm asking about is the cheetahs, and I would need to add these together, okay? So 4 plus 8 is 12, 12 plus 6 is 18, 18 plus 2 is 20. So my total is going to be, or my whole is going to be 20. So if I asked you to write a fraction of cheetahs that were at this wildlife reserve, your answer would be 4/20, okay? How you can simplify it, remember you divide by the largest factor that goes into both of them evenly. So we could divide by 2, but let's think about something larger. Does 4 go into 20? Yes. So let's divide both the numerator and the denominator by 4. So you get 1 out of every 5 at the wildlife. 1 animal out of every 5 is a cheetah. So the answer to your question, what fraction of animals are cheetahs at this reserve, your answer would be 1/5, okay? So one other thing that they might ask you to do is to find the relative frequency, okay? So relative, it's not like your relatives, like your, it actually kind of is. Your relatives are like your siblings and your aunts and your uncles and your parents and your grandparents. But relative frequency, what relative means is it means that it's related, okay? It's related to the total. Okay, so how often does something happen? What is the frequency related to the total? All right, so technically, this right here could be a relative frequency of how many cheetahs in the wildlife reserve. So on part of your assignments, it's going to ask you what the relative frequency is. So relative frequency, okay, again, can be a fraction or it can be a percent. So if I wanted the relative frequency of cheetahs, all right, that's 4 out of 20. So I would write my fraction 4 out of 20, and it's your choice whether you simplify it or not, okay? So if you were trying to make this a percent, okay, and you took your 4 out of 20, remember your percent box is your part over your whole. So you have 4 out of 20 are cheetahs. So what percent out of 100 are cheetahs? So once you set up your percent box, there's 2 ways to do it. You can cross multiply and divide. That'll work every single time. But there's also, you can look for the easy way, all right? So 20 times what is 100? 20 times 5. So 4 times 5 is 20. So 20 out of 100 is equal to 4 out of 20. So there's 20% of the animals were cheetahs, all right? So what if I asked you for the relative frequency of a lion? So first off, relative frequency, remember, is how often something happens related to the total. So we need to write a fraction first, and then we can change it into a percent. So the frequency of lions would be 8/20. So I'm going to write that as a fraction, 8/20. It would be lions compared to the total. Now remember, when you take your fraction, all right, let's find out the relative frequency of lions that are in the reserve. So we've written our fraction, 8 out of 20. Now we could simplify it and put that fraction as well in here in your percent box. It doesn't matter, you're going to get the same answer, because when you simplify a fraction, it's still equivalent or equal to what the fraction you started with. So if we want our part to be lions over our whole, there's 8 lions out of 20 total, and we want to know what percent out of 100. Okay, so again, I could do it the easy way. I could say times 5, or I could do the way that's going to work every single time no matter what my numbers are. So we have 800, 100 times 8 is 800. We're cross multiplying and dividing. So divide by 20. We're going to divide by 10, do I for an I. 80 divided by 2 is 40. So if you want to check yourself, put 40 here, cross multiply, and make sure that they're equivalent ratios that you put into that percent box. So your answer for the relative frequency of lions would be 40%. Okay? So one more thing that could happen on some of your assignments is that you could get a fraction and maybe something like this, okay? And you're trying to turn it into a percent box. Every now and then when you do that, okay, when you, not turn it into a percent box, I'm sorry, turn it into a percent, okay? Sometimes, like, we're gonna get 400 divided by 14, all right? I'm guessing, but I'm not thinking 14 is gonna go into 400 evenly. All right, so I am going to allow you to use a calculator for this lesson. All right, I do want you to show your work, but I will allow you to use a calculator on your cross multiplying and dividing. So read your assignments really, really carefully, because there is one that on the instructions under the classwork tab, if you'll press a view assignment and look at the instructions, I have a little treat for you if you read your instructions carefully. So 14 goes into 4, none. 14 goes into 40. Let's try times 3, make sure. Okay, so that's too big. So it's going to go 2 times. I'm going to have 12 left over, bring my 0 down. Let's see, let's try 8. Okay, that's pretty close, so it's going to be 8. And see, we're still not going to get we're not going to get our remainder of 0. So we're going to put our decimal, we're going to drop one more 0. Okay, so let's try, let's say times 5. Let's see what that is. When we get 70. All right, so that's going to be 28.5. Now you can stop here. Again, you were going to do it on a calculator. All right, so this would keep going, but we can stop. So if you do this on the calculator, yours is going to be 28.5 something, 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 okay? So what you can do here, and I put this on your directions, is you can round to the nearest percent. All right, round to the nearest percent. So if I want you to round to the nearest percent, that means I don't want a decimal place, okay? So that 5 is big enough to round this 28% up to 29%. So right here, 4 14ths, that as a fraction, if I turn that into a percent and I rounded to the nearest percent, that would be 29%. Again, you may use a calculator on your homework.